Good evening, everyone. I'll call the Monday, August 5th, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting into order. Before I get going, usually have an invocation of Pledge of Allegiance before we start the meeting and do the approval of the agenda. And we don't have... Went on. My mic's not on. Sorry. We haven't had anybody come forward in a while to do our invocation, and so at this time, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to offer an invocation this evening and lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance, I'd invite you to come up to the podium, and if not, we will handle it a different way. No one's jumping up this evening. Okay.
I'll do it.
You do it. Come on up, please, Mr. Miller. Thank you.
If you bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, thank you for this day that you've given us, the wonderful weather, the nice evening, the cool breezes, and the people that we have to spend it with. Lord, we pray that you watch over each and every one of us as we conduct business tonight, that we treat each other with respect, that you find us to look into our hearts and treat each other as you would want us to treat each other. Lord, please watch over and bless each and every one of us, our talents and the gifts and the blessings that you've given all of us. Keep us all safe as we travel home this evening, and we pray that any work that we do for your honor and for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right. Open floor for a motion to approve the agenda, or is there any changes this evening?
I'll make a motion. Approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, public comment. I do not have anyone signed up for public comment this evening. Would anyone like to speak this evening under public comment? Seeing no one, I will close public comment. Next item on the agenda is Commissioner's Report. I'll begin. For those of you that look at our agendas and go through the agenda packet, you'll notice there's some changes to our packets. Been talking with staff for several months now on this, and they've implemented some changes to it. Just adding a little more information. It serves us better as board members for the general public looking in. Hopefully it adds more information from you. We see more information than you do, but my goal is to impart more information both to the public at large that reads these things and the Board of Commissioners. And to that end, we've made some changes, and I just want to take a minute to thank staff for the extra effort they put in. It's a little more work for them to compile the data and put it together for us. And so I just want to say thank you. It looks good. This afternoon, we had a 2-hour Tourism Advisory Board meeting. I want to thank the Tourism Advisory Board members for putting the extra time today to do that. Myself and the county manager were there, and as well as some of the tourism staff. And we're going to be rolling out a new program soon, at least as soon as the tourism, we as the Board of Commissioners sit as the Tourism Development Authority to approve a new program, and it's an event assistance program. We have that currently for advertising. It caps out at about $2,000. But we're also working on a new grant program for these larger venues that are here and helping them get off on the right foot, be successful. And so we'll have that rolled out here pretty soon, hopefully. We'll bring it before the board, and after that we'll put it out to the public. Some of the things you'll notice as you look through that, one of the things we're looking at is one time a year to do that, and that would be in December as of right now, so that we can have all that in front of us. We have a finite amount of funds set aside for that, and we can judge projects accordingly based on what's in front of us. So for those of you that are in the event business or maybe want to plan a nice event, we have varying levels that we can help you with those events. So just keep your eyes out on the Tourism Advisory website, or on the tourism website. Visit Currituck.com for that information, and we'll look forward to seeing you on that. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Payment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just going to give everybody an update regarding to some of the roads and DOT projects, especially in the county here. I talked to a DOT individual last week and just got some updates, and he informed me that the states informed them to it's not going to be as lucrative to get projects done as it has been. They told them to watch and pick their projects carefully. The paving is going to get done on the south end of the county. They're not waiting for the season to tourist season end. They're just waiting to get started. But as far as potholes and other projects, they're going to be tight this year getting those projects done. But they're going to do everything they can and address the concerns of the citizens out there. And that's all.
Was that budgetary constraints or something for them?
Budgetary constraints.
Okay. Commissioner Etheridge?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Jarvis and I are grateful for the opportunity we had to attend the National Association of Counties annual conference last month in Nevada, but we're more grateful that we did not melt because the average temperature was between 110 and 120 the entire time we were gone. Even with the heat, we stayed busy with workshops, steering committee meetings, visiting vendors, and networking. The highlight of the conference was our general sessions that included special speaker, acting administrator, and general counsel of the U.S. Small Business Administration, senior vice president of the U.S. Social Impact on Sesame Workshops, Dr. Jeanette Benacourt, and CEO of the Purpose Institute, Roy Spence. Dr. Benacourt discussed the importance of supporting children and their family because counties invest more than $58 billion each year in human services. She informed us that the Sesame Workshop is a global education organization that helps children grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. Her main focus was on I can't say it.
I can't help you. I don't know what the word is.
Prioritizing early childhood in counties. Sesame Street in Communities has worked in Guilford and Transylvania counties in North Carolina to create resources to help connect the youth with services. Roy Spence is the chairman and co-founder of an advertising and marketing and the Purpose Institute. His talk was very inspirational. He stated if America is going to develop to its full potential, we need to have purpose, not politics. We need to do good and be happy. If you're doing good and you're not happy, you're probably not doing good. But the one quote that Mr. Spence made that I want to leave with my fellow commissioners is, the purpose of America's county commissioners is to listen, learn, act, and take responsibility for always serving the greater good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Beaumont?
Yes, I serve on the Veterans Advisory Board for Currituck County, and I wanted to announce to those watching and the audience that the county is now in the process of registering veterans. It's completely optional. One of the purposes, several reasons for doing that. One of them is to get a handle on just how many veterans live in our county. There are grants and there are programs that are available, and one of the metrics that drives that is how many veterans are actually in your county. So I would encourage you to go to the county's. I'm going to ask Larry, what's the quick link to the registration? CurrituckVets.com. Okay, so CurrituckVets.com is the quick link to the site. If you're driving, please don't write it down. If you go to the county's website and then go to economic development, there's a link directly there. But please register. The other thing that the Veterans Advisory Board is doing is meeting with local businesses, and which have the option of registering as a Currituck veteran-friendly business. And there will be more news coming out on that. But the goal is to have our local businesses recognize those who have served the country, and just to help with the veterans that are within the county. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Mr. McCoy?
A couple things. I attended the Peach Festival in Knott's Island last weekend. To my knowledge, it was probably the biggest one they've had. It was crazy busy. A great event. Go to the county website. Make sure you county social media page. Just the different things that go on in the county. Like I said, the Peach Festival. It's a great fundraiser. They had tons of stuff. It was a really good time. Like to thank the staff, as Chairman White said. I had some issues with somebody on some codes. They called Jenny Turner from the planning staff. 2 minutes, boom, fixed it. Be it her, be it Parks and Rec, Public Works. Our county staff does a really, really good job. And, you know, they're behind the scenes. Sometimes they don't get a lot of credit. Sometimes they receive more crud than credit. So I'm giving them some kudos. And a final note, Wednesday, last week, we had a bad wreck in front of, and this is not a kudos to the Sheriff's Department. I'm actually complimenting the Highway Patrol. We don't have a lot of troopers here, but one of our local boys, he saved a girl's life. She's 22 today. She's still in Norfolk General, but she was in a horrible wreck, and it cut like right here by her carotid. And when the wreck came out, he was like 30 seconds, literally on scene. Between him and fire and EMS, we got some of those guys in here. They did a phenomenal job. The girl lived. She's 22 today. She would not have celebrated a 22nd birthday had he not stopped the bleeding. Nice family that have lived in Currituck for 25 years. Probably she's lived here her whole life, graduated from Currituck. Trooper Matt Gershak, kudos to him. He did a phenomenal job. And just wanted to note that. And the EMS staff, and you know, they nightingaled her and everything, and just, I mean, we have good staff here in the county. I mean, I know when you go on the social media pages, they bash this one for missing that one, but all in all, you know, we have good staff here, and just kudos to all that everybody puts in to make it a safe place and a happy place to live. That's it for me.
Thanks, sir. Commissioner Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, attended the Peach Festival, as you did, Mr. Chairman. I talked to Kevin, and county manager was there. Hats off to the Knott's Island Ruetan Club for putting that on. There was a lot of people there, the most I've ever seen, and I've been to quite a few of them. And talking about DOT, Commissioner Payment, we need to talk to DOT about this road out here coming into this courthouse. When they come up to pave this last section in here, maybe they could come over here and just catch that and fix it. Thank you.
Make it happen, Ben. Commissioner Jarvis.
I attended the Trillium Northern Regional Advisory Board on July 9th, and there were several things that were discussed. One of them was the lawsuit that were filed by the 3 companies not selected to implement the Medicaid Transformation Standard Plan. Director Bland Baker informed us that the cases would move forward, but the injunction to halt the transformation was denied. So more on that later. Also, the MCOs, the managed care organizations, have worked with Department of Health and Human Services on tweaking letters mailed to beneficiaries over concerns that some people who are eligible for the tailored plans may lose services if they signed up for the standard plans. And the enrollment broker, which is Maximus, is working on increasing education about that issue for those people who might be in that situation. And finally, Nash County, which is in our region, they're going to be the only county in the original and initial rollout of Medicare transformation. All the other counties will be in the subsequent rollovers, but with the budget stalemate, this may actually delay the initial rollout until March of 2020, and that would, of course, delay our rollout as well. And then finally, Commissioner Etheridge and I did attend the NACO National Convention in Clark County, and it was a wonderful opportunity. It was a positive networking, positive message by every single session I attended. One of the most impressive sessions was called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community by Doug Griffiths. He outlined all these insightful challenges that communities face and often respond to in a terrible way that can limit a community's success. And he gave so many good examples of how to overcome those and to avoid the pitfalls that kill your community. Both Commissioner Etheridge and I have requested a copy of his book, and I would love to share it with all the commissioners because I really thought he did an excellent job. And Ms. Etheridge mentioned Roy Spence, and that was probably the most positive message. He's an ad exec and used great clips from commercials that were humorous and poignant to illustrate the greater good, and always keeping in mind the greater good, to underscore his message. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. County Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. First of all, just so that the community's aware, the early college at Knapp begins on the 8th of August. So this week they're going to start school over there. Be aware of that. So you will have a school zone with school zone speed limits
$438 ticket.
here on the highway, just so that folks know. Parks and Recreation is currently taking registrations for their flag football program. I'm happy to report that we received our totals for workers' comp and liability insurance claims for calendar year 2018, and we had almost a 50% reduction from the previous year on both of those spends. So that's a really good news for us, and hopefully that'll lead to some lower premiums for us in the future. I've been asked by some of our homeowners associations on the Outer Banks to make folks aware that there is you're not allowed to keep things on the beach here. You have to get them off after they're tagged. There have been some issues where some of the rental companies are storing things under walkovers in private communities. That's not allowed, and so I just wanted to put that out there and thank any of the homeowners associations that have helped us police some of that. And finally, just wanted to give a quick update on a couple of things that are going on at a staff level. First of all, in the planning department, the land use plan is moving forward, getting closer to coming to this board. We've met with some representatives from Lower Currituck and heard some concerns that they had. We're going to address some of those over the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully we'll be able to move that forward for sometime in November, looking to hopefully come before the Board of Commissioners. We are also working on a couple of things with our development fees, or also known as TAP fees, is what you've heard them called in the past here. The first is looking at when we can assess those fees. Staff's going to bring an amendment forward that would allow us to assess the fees at the building permit stage for water taps. Sewer would stay like it is, which is at the final plat. But just putting that out there. I know we've got a lot of folks who are kind of concerned about that, and are also concerned about the actual cost of the development fees as you go up to larger meter sizes. We're doing some analysis to see if we think that cost is appropriate, or if we need to adjust it some based on some other things other than just the development fee study. And that's all that I have this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is administrative reports. Item A, Economic Development Report to Commissioners. And with that, we have Mr. Larry Lombardi.
Thank you, and good evening.
You, sir.
Before I go into my report, I did want to mention, Mr. Beaumont, in terms of the registration of veterans, we have close to 200 since we've opened that up, and about a dozen businesses. So just to give you an update on that. So doing great work. All right, let's see. We'll go forward. There we go. All right, I'll get it. Again, I appreciate everybody the opportunity to be here to give an update on the economic development. Thank you, Ben, for the opportunity to do that. I have roughly about 27 slides, but it's not going to take that long. There's a lot of photos and infographics.
10 slides.
10 slides. Ooh. But let me go through this for you, and certainly if you have any questions, please ask them. The main thing is, what's the objectives for economic development? And I'm not going to read these, but you can take a look at it yourself. But it pretty much covers what you do as an economic development director. Now, I'm going to go over a few numbers, which is your standard economic development information, county population. Again, these numbers that I have are from other databases, so you'll see the sources underneath there. And you look at the county population, number of people employed in the county, and the median household income. The reason why I bring that up is when you deal with developers, site selectors, they like to look at that type of information. Next one, when we talk about projects assisted, really what that means is engagements with various individuals, developers, helping existing companies, connecting businesses to other resources that may be available on the state level for grants, things like that. Also, helping businesses looking for sites or office space, whatever it may be. So, and this was over the period of a couple of years when I started back in May of 2017. And as we go forward doing these reports, either do quarterly or yearly, whichever you prefer, I'll do whatever you like. So let me go on to the next one, which is everybody likes to see. Based on those commercial permits that I showed on a couple slides before, this is the estimated capital investment that when they fill out their forms and so forth. So it's just almost $20 million. So now when you look at from the tax office, that's the real number. And based on those commercial permits, total $41 million. So there's a great deal of growth that is occurring from the commercial side in the county and will continue to grow. And those numbers will get higher as we move along, particularly as we start moving with Currituck Station. So this one I have to kind of chuckle a little bit. What does an economic development director do? You know, I've been doing this for about a dozen years, and in a couple of weeks, my wife and I will be celebrating 45 years of marriage. And she still asks me, what do you do? You know, so if you've ever been asked that question, what does an economic development director does? It's definitely a fair question. So, you know, don't take any offense that if somebody ever asks you that. So let me talk a little bit about what economic development director does. And I kind of put it into 4 bubbles here, and I'll go into each one. But starting at the top with the supporting existing businesses, that's very important. As you all know, 85% of job creation and growth is from our existing businesses. So we want to make sure that we are supporting the existing businesses because they've already committed, they live here, they make the investment here, and we want to make sure they continue to grow. Also, at the same time, we want to encourage new business because it's always great to have new businesses come in. They bring in new money, which helps grow the economy. And then certainly there's a process that you have to attract those businesses to know about Currituck County and why it's a great place to invest. And then the last one is connecting our business community with our various resources that we have through the chamber, events, workshops, presentations, all those kind of things. And it just goes around and around. So just kind of give you an idea of what an economic development director does. Now, from supporting existing businesses, well, I do get lots of calls because the call area is working. And there's a lot of questions. And as opposed to read all of them to you, I just kind of put some up there to see what it is.
I'll take planning for 400, Alex.
Yeah, okay, that's right. Exactly. So the last one at the bottom, I do get calls about the Green Bay Packers. Full disclosure, I do own stock in the Green Bay Packers. But anyway, just to give you an idea of the type of things and topics and calls and interests that people are calling my office. As far as Small Business Spotlight, you may have seen this in the Coast OBX, where it's a publication, about 10,000 are put out every week, about 20 weeks, and I highlight, first I had a full page, and the best way to take advantage of promoting small business was to give half of the page to small businesses, and we write an article about the business every week, something different. And so far we've done 28 different businesses. It's no cost to them. So how do you encourage new business creation? Well, We have a number of resources. The biggest one here, as you see up on the top, 1004, you may be familiar that I mentioned about that, a program that's out of Norfolk and Hatch Operations. Our Small Business Technology Development Center that's out of NAGSA that supports Currituck and Dare County. They do a great job. The resource business guide is something that's a downloadable file, PDF file on thinkcurrituck.com. So people can, and we do get a lot of requests because I get copies of it. And we probably have had well over 150 individuals and companies from all around Hampton Roads, because there really isn't a business resource guide that anybody can go to. So it's been a great tool. The newest thing that will be coming up on the website in the next month or two is the Startup Small Business Guide. It's not quite completed yet, but it will be up there. Then, of course, also I work closely with the Chamber. I've seen some of the Board of Commissioners at some of the events, Blue Ribbon, the ribbon cutting, and some other events. And certainly from the Albemarle Commission, they're great to work with. When we have businesses contact, what can we do about workforce, or how can we have some jobs opening, who can we speak to? So these are very important, useful information for companies that are looking to find this type of information. Now, how do you attract outside business? This is a very interesting and different way of how things are done nowadays. For example, you got to get their attention. So how do you do that? Well, the old way was interruption. You're interrupting people with ads or commercials. Or you think about the old way, like buying a car or buying real estate. Buying real estate, you would have to go to a real estate office to actually look at a book and see what homes are for sale. Cars, same thing. You have to go to the dealership. You're looking for a new car. Not anymore. Everybody is looking for information, providing information to have that intelligence. So when they do go, they know what they're looking for. So you have to have helpful content and information that attracts people to you, meaning Currituck County. So at this point, I want to talk about marketing and the strategy and activity. And this is where it really deals with online. I have in the audience tonight is Douglas Burdett, gentleman in the bow tie there. And he is the founder and principal of Artillery Marketing, who helps me from the online perspective. Douglas is a former New York ad man, former Artillery Army guy, BMI graduate, and his son Norwood recently accepted a job with Currituck County for fire and EMS. So we're glad to have his son aboard. Great job. So let me talk a little bit about the marketing aspect of it. The website, thinkcurrituck.com, that is ground zero for our communications. It's the website, thinkcurrituck.com. Most of the initiatives that I do are done with the objective of getting people to visit thinkcurrituck.com. And what that ultimately happens is it gets me in a conversation with them first. It's very important. Now, there's ways of doing that, and original content. You look at just what it costs compared to traditional marketing. Now, we do, obviously, the advertising, which is traditional. But if you look at the various things that we do here, we're almost like a publisher for like any other magazine or newspaper. But the difference is the content that is being focused is on Currituck County and Currituck County economic development. That's the key. It has to be relative. Now, from an online perspective, with that type of content, it brings more people to the thinkcurrituck.com website. So the more we create creative, original content, we attract more visitors. And you can just look at the numbers. I'm not going to go through them, but you can see how the increase has occurred over the last few years, and just in the last year alone. So what that means is that we're positioning Currituck County Economic Development as experts when it comes to the conversation providing answers or insight regarding economic development and searching for information online about doing business here in Currituck County. And that's what we want people to do. Now, you may have heard the term search engine optimization, SEO. And the big key here is organic keywords. To the right there, you see we have 150 plus keywords that put thinkcurrituck.com on the first page. For example, the expert advice on buying land. If you put in buying land in North Carolina, throughout the world, doesn't matter wherever you put it in, thinkcurrituck.com comes up number one. So, and, you know, people with organic searches, it comes from people that found us on their own through search engines like Google, Bing, and others. And they'll type in a question or a statement or topic, just like I mentioned. Now, you could end up paying for Google ads if you want, and people click on those ads, but a lot of times they're sponsor links. But a lot of people don't necessarily trust those ads, so they're not quite as effective. But if you look at the keywords that we have, the value, you see $11,000. What it means, if we had to pay for those keywords, it would cost us $11,000. So we're way ahead of the ball game as far as how to get the attraction, how to get the ranking up number one with organic keywords. I can't stress that enough because people pay a lot of money for Google ads and don't get the return.
Nope, I don't.
And Bob, I know you're in that business,
All
so you know
organic.
it exactly. Now, of course, because we're in the online world, there's platforms that are appropriate for economic development. Facebook, for example, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And again, just looking from last year to this year in terms of the interactions that we've had, it's been a tremendous increase. And a lot of times I'll get messages via LinkedIn because I have a number of people that I'm LinkedIn, not only when I was here, but previous, asking questions, and they see the articles or they have questions about Currituck County. So these are things you just can't pay to have people come and contact you. And some other additional marketing things that we do, like I said, print advertising, the Coast OBX, which is traditional, but it's targeted. It's in the area that we want it to be. I do presentations and certainly are involved with sponsorships with different organizations, professional organizations. And I do, and I think you all receive my monthly email newsletter, and hopefully that you like those emails, because we do get a tremendous click rate in terms of opening those emails and people actually read them compared to what you typically get on a newsletter. So let me go on to the next one. Connecting our business community. You look right here at the middle of it, economic development, which drives the economy, okay? And starting right with citizens. I think, Selena, you hit it in terms of what we need to do for the greater good. And certainly economic development is for the greater good. Quality of life, investments, job opportunities. But if you look at that, even when you look at the county government, economic development works with various departments. Lower East Department, we have a great line of communication, working on things of how we could, once a business or individual is looking to come into the county, how we're working together on that, where economic development is involved from the very beginning, all the way to the process to where the final permit's been approved and they're ready to build. Again, it's you just from a state level for grants or working with the state economic development, they typically will come through and funnel to the economic development. And the local businesses, it's as Mr. Sam Miller back there, who's going to be presenting next on his project, he's called me a couple different times looking for additional resources on things that he's trying to do with things that he has with the businesses. And those are the kind of things that you can't put a price on. And certainly there's a lot of referrals from business prospects. For example, the gentleman who owns Pass the Salt, He's buddies with Bobby Clark, is the gentleman that's building Currituck Pet Supply up in Moyac, because Danny knew who I was. He's good buddies with him. He had Bobby call me, and of course that goes through last year. Now he's building 10,000 square foot building up there. So those are the things, having that connection, having that attraction, let people know who you are is so important. Now, this is the end of my slide. 2 questions. Actually, the second question is the most important, but I'll do this first one. How can I help? How can you help me? Well, you've actually been doing it since the day I've started here. You're here to help me to support things that do come up that you hear in the business community. You get me involved, and I can't ask anything more than that. I'm just ask that you continue to do that, because I think that's important for everybody, that we have lines of communication. And the most important one is, how can I help you? And that's what I want to leave with you all. And I'm available anytime. You can call me, see me, but that's the most important. What can I do to help you? That's all I have.
Any questions? Comments? Uh-oh. Commissioner Bond might have something.
Yeah. So we just came out of a state softball tournament where we had approximately 1,000 visitors from across the state. Commissioner White and I were doing some fuzzy math on, it was not a bar napkin, but the question was, so how much revenue did we lose by not having a hotel in the county? Do you have an estimate?
I don't have an actual estimate, but I can tell you
So our WAG was probably a $500,000 impact to not having hotels, that our
absolutely.
restaurants didn't sell food, et cetera, et cetera. So where are we on, number one, any rumors of hotels or something like that? Are we making any progress would be the first question. The second question is, what can we do to help? Because it has escaped me why there is not a hotel in the mainland of the county.
And Commissioner Bone, I had asked that question about Jason Weeks the day of about rooms. He said they were scrambling, calling every place in the county, that the Riviera, anything that had a room, they were trying to get them booked, but
Yep.
they didn't. People were
So-
asking him for hotels.
Exactly. So we have tournaments all summer long, and
40 this year.
right. How can we help you? Help us.
Help you.
Help you.
We have a couple of
asking.
places. Oh, well, I mean, we've done that hotel study, and it justifies that there is not only, it says one, they were being very conservative about that, but I think there could be 2 hotels here in the county. And I'll say up in the Moyac area, and probably down towards the southern end of the county, or maybe in the center. I am in discussions with a couple of different groups that do build hotels. And this is not it takes a while. It's certainly, we just started with the tournaments last year, and there are some pro forma groups out that some pro forma stats that I could show you with sports tourism that drives the economy and what the impact is.
Well, I just used that as a very recent example.
Yep.
Predating our tournament complex, I believe the case was absolutely there for this. So, just please make sure you let Ben know. But
Not only
it is ridiculous, and I know you can't direct Holiday Inn to get it here this weekend.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
the point is, it is blatantly obvious to anybody that lives here or hits that road on the weekend that there should be a hotel in this county.
Well, and to put a caveat, that type of tournament that we hosted, speaking with Mr. Weed, that generates hundreds of thousands of local dollars in your economy. Mm-hmm. And we weren't capturing all of it because of some of the amenities we didn't have in place. But but that still brings a lot to a community.
Yeah, there were some of the restaurants around were filled with a lot of people that were at the tournament. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we're losing the room revenue either to Elizabeth City or Chesapeake or maybe even to the Outer Banks.
We should get that letter from Elizabeth City framed. The one
Yeah.
that says, thank you for not having a hotel.
Exactly.
Well, the other thing is too, not only just with the baseball, when they had the basketball tournaments, they were at two schools, and at the Parks and Rec gym, there was 2,000. I mean, there's one thing that everybody in this room spends money on. You spend money on your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's one thing
and the numbers show that.
Hey, and if you had the choice between spending a night in Elizabeth City or in one in Currituck, we all know where they'd come anyway. So
Yeah, that's,
Well, to
But I-
piggyback on what Paul's talking about, how many people stay in Elizabeth City or Eatonton that are coming to the Outer Banks and they come a day early so they don't
Absolutely.
have to make
Yeah.
a long drive?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to have this discussion further offline.
Got it.
And-
Right.
But there is one thing I'd
Wink.
like to ask Larry if he could
Yes,
do
sir.
for us. Sometime make a presentation on what it takes to attract a major business. We hear so often on social media, I'd like to have this big box retailer. I'd like to have this restaurant. And what people fail to understand is they count rooftops and just go through a simple exercise on what a big business looks at when they look at a new location.
Sure. Maybe the next time, that's something, I'll cover that topic. I'd be more than happy to do that for you. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you.
Just remember, call Larry.
BR 549.
That number is.
BR 549.
All right. Next up on the agenda is public hearings. Item A, consideration and action, PB 19-14, Moyock Farms. Request for a preliminary plat use permit for a 31-lot residential subdivision located at 1216 Currituck Highway in the Moyock Township. I'll skip over the text amendment stuff. And do I need to swear you guys in for this one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so anyone that's going to be speaking to this, need to have you come up and be sworn in. All right. Left hand on the Bible and right in the air. Got everybody? All right. Do you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. All right. Now I get to turn it over to Ms. Cicero.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The case before you tonight is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so that means it is a use permit preliminary plat. The applicant is requesting, is proposing a 31-lot residential subdivision. The applicant is Miller Homes and Building LLC. It is a 100-acre tract right here just north of Ranchland, in between, essentially between Ranchland subdivision and the Foss tract. It's what we refer to as the old auto auction property. It is currently zoned general business, and you can see the surrounding zoning. The planned development residential, the Foss tract to the north and west, the single-family mainland zoning designation to the south, and across the highway is AG, our agriculture zoning district. It is in the full service for the 2006 land use plan area, or the 2006 land use plan has this area designated as full service and limited service in the Moyock small area plan, which came in several years later, I think 2013, 2012, from Moyock small area plan. So they are proposing 31 lots, and it is going to be a minimum lot size of 2 acres. They are required to provide 30% open space, and they are providing 30.39% open space. Some of the new information that's in the staff report that the chairman was speaking about earlier is we do have the amount of students that this development will generate. The 31 lots will generate 7.75 elementary school students to go into either Moyock, Shawboro, the central, in that area of the county. It will generate 2.48 just under 2.5 middle school students, and 4.34 high school students. Right now, our schools are at the actual capacity for the elementary schools, the northern elementary schools, 92% actual capacity, and the high school, the two high schools, the Currituck High School and JP Knapp, they're at 84% actual capacity.
Before you move on, so you have actual capacity and committed capacity. This committed capacity, there was a sub-note down there about 2021, so that you're hitting 118% at projecting at 2021 with the various houses that are coming online?
Correct.
Paper Kids?
The paper kids,
Yeah.
correct. All what has been approved, all the lots that have been approved but haven't been built out, haven't received, have a house built on it and received a certificate of compliance for that house. Those are the paper kids. Those are the proposed kids that we're tracking. And with the change in classroom size by the General Assembly for K through 3, and with what we have on paper, that is correct. The committed capacity for the elementary schools in the northern part of the county, we're going to be at 118% at 2021. So with those new standards, and the high school is 104%. That's what the lots that we have approved on the books. So,
And when you spoke of new standards, maybe you could just briefly hit on that. So you said new standards at 2021, right? Just so the public understands, we're talking about the schools have changed how they are looking at classroom sizes and that sort of thing.
correct.
Right.
For kindergarten through third grade, they are putting a essentially a limit on how big those classrooms can be, how the actual number of students can be. And I don't have those right off the top of my head, but it's 21 and less for all of those for kindergarten through third grade. And I think some of them are even down to only allowing 18 kids per classroom, the new standard. I'm sorry, I don't have those.
That's okay. I just wanted a little bit of clarity. Since you said it, if somebody doesn't understand what that means, I just wanted that point of clarity.
And Ms. Cicero, what was that percentage again that triggers discussions for school?
Well, you all will see anything, when we hit 85% any capacity, at 85% capacity, you all will see anything that's 5 acres to 20 acres. And after that, I mean, you'll see anything anyway. Sorry, I blundered that. You all naturally, by our UDO regulation, see anything over 20 lots. It will come to you through a use permit. Staff has the authority to approve anything less than 20 lots. We have a 5-lot minor subdivision that has even less standards to go through. When we hit that 85% capacity, you all will see everything from 5 lots to 20 and come through the use permit process. So, or when it's a major subdivision, when new infrastructure is having to be installed, like a new road or something like that, it will kick it into the, for you all to see those. Did I?
And so
Yeah,
that,
that's fine.
I think, and piggybacking on that, one of the things that, people will use school capacity to ostensibly slow development or stop or maybe reject an applicant. But if we do that, I believe that starts the clock ticking on when we have to affect a change, right?
Correct. It brings into effect our adequate facilities ordinance, which says that we have to have a plan in place within 2 years to solve the problem that has triggered the adequate facilities ordinance.
Well, plan in place. All right. Thank you. Got you sidetracked.
That's
I
okay.
appreciate it.
The applicant is proposing for this development to be on county water, and the septic will be an on-site system. The applicant is also proposing 2 stormwater front. Here, let me get to.
Did you say an on-site engineered system?
It will end up that. Thank
Is that
you.
what you're referring to?
It will be in it. It will have to be an on-site engineered system. We have a recommendation from the Albemarle Regional Health Service that it needs to be engineered, and they have some standards that they list. So for stormwater, the applicant is proposing lot line swells to transport the stormwater to these stormwater ponds, the two that are going to be out here next to, along the frontage, Currituck Highway frontage. And the applicant will also states that, subject to obtaining the right to work on the existing ditch, it will be deepened, laid back, and put on a proper grade. If permission is not forthcoming, a parallel ditch will be constructed, because staff did have concerns with how developing this property could impact ranch land and the neighboring Foss project. So let me. Yep. So Commissioner Payment made the observation that this was going to be required engineered systems for on-site septic, because this septic is not suitable, but we did get information from the Albemarle Health Department that, let me get this. Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that question to come up as quickly as it did. So essentially, they were going to have to add some fill and increase the drainage area for the engineered septic tanks for this to become provisionally suitable for this area, for these lots to have on-site septic. The transportation, they are going to be building a road and providing pedestrian, a 5-foot ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the street. Their connectivity score is proposed to be 1.5, and they haven't met the minimum requirement for 1.4. They will be having street trees and major arterial landscaping along the highway frontage. And the offsite, they will be accepting a fee in lieu of open space for recreation and park area dedication.
What's the acre? I mean, I know you said it's 30% of open space, and roughly 2-acre lots times 31 is 60 some acres. What's the total property?
The total property is right at 100 acres.
Okay.
So they're going to be like just over 30 acres is going to be held in open space. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. This does meet our minimum requirements for UDO for approval. However, staff does have some concerns, and most of them revolve around the railroad crossing. The applicant will need to submit a new railroad crossing application to change the existing crossing agreement. There's an email in your packet where there is an existing crossing agreement in place, but that was for the Eagle Auto auction. So all the new requirements, any safety requirements we're going to be, that the railroad's going to require, will be after they review the new application and the new set of plans. So we are concerned, staff is concerned about the railroad crossing. We're also concerned that on the southbound lane that we'd need a decel lane for stacking with the railroad crossing. There's just not a lot of space to be queuing. If there's a train coming and people are trying to turn right into the proposed development, there's not a lot of space to queue on the other side of the railroad crossing. And some pictures that we took with the county, the code enforcement officer's car. So our recommendation is to approve this with a signalized crossing for the applicant to investigate the use of the southbound deceleration lane for queuing for the train, clear the line of sights for the train crossing for both the northbound and southbound traffic, install the perimeter ditches to serve both the new development and ranch land, deepen and lay back a 6-to-1 slope, and put existing ditches on proper grade where permission can be obtained from owners, and install the community mailboxes to NCDOT standards. That was another concern we had about the the cluster mailbox, community mailbox, not meeting DOT design criteria. So those are our recommendations for staff, and I will be glad to answer any questions.
Did you have a thought on how long the D-cell lane needs to be? Do we need to be able to stack 5 cars at the D-cell lane, or 2 school buses, or they'll? Yeah.
And it comes off of that curve a little bit. I mean, depending on how far it went back. Coming south.
So
Okay.
we would ask for DOT input on the D-cell lane to accommodate ample
Right.
stacking.
How long is the one on Mayock Landon Drive? Just out of curiosity. 5 vehicles, man. The diesel lane going into Mayock.
Right,
How?
it's about 5.
5 or 6 probably.
Depends on if it's your truck
Or yeah.
or Kitty's truck.
But that's 100 or more houses back there too, isn't it?
Ms. Cicero, can you explain the concern about the mailbox area? That was a little vague in the packet.
Well, the mailbox cluster, the cluster mailboxes, which are now required, the way they have them designed currently, when they pull into the cluster mailbox, instead of pulling off to the side, they would actually have to back out into the primary drive aisle, which could impact how DOT would see that they would be backing directly into a DOT-maintained right-of-way when this is turned over to DOT instead of being able to pull off. That was our concern, with that it would be backing out into a DOT right-of-way instead of.
Having a crescent or something for them to, yeah.
Is there space to remedy that problem?
Potentially, that would be something that we'd work with the applicant on if he so chose.
Have we required any other, developments to have signalized crossings?
Well, we have not, but this is concerning to us because there's already an agreement in place that required signalized crossings for the auto auction. So to us, with the number of trips that would be generated, I think it's around 9 trips per day that a single-family lot would generate, that for safety reasons, that we feel that would be necessary as staff. That many trips per day coming out, that a signalized crossing would be beneficial, be a safety benefit.
Any further questions, Ms. Cicero?
Just one, Ms. Cicero. It says comments yet not received. One of them is from the county engineer. Have we gotten any comments since this came out from our county engineer regarding any of this, drainage or wastewater or anything?
He and I have spoken about this because of the staff change with our stormwater technician has left. And he and I have spoken briefly about this project. We did receive comments from the stormwater technician prior to him departing employment
So
in
Wells
Currituck County.
in there.
And Eric feels like those concerns have been addressed with the stormwater plan in place.
Okay. Anything else for Ms. Cicero? All right. This time I'll bring the applicant up to tell us about their project. And even if you would, please state your name and address for the record. And
Yes, sir. Sam Miller, and our business address is 111 Currituck Commercial Drive, Suite B in Moyock, North Carolina, 27958.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, do you have anything that you want to add to what she's talked about this evening to
Sure.
help us with our decision this evening?
Yeah, I just made a couple notes while we were listening. And we did have our TRC meeting where we met with staff as well as the other technical review parties previously prior to this meeting with y'all. Just for a couple things, as far as, let me do something really easy, the mailbox piece with a pull-off, we had just recently completed a subdivision with a pull-off, and I don't know why we did it that way, but that's all stuff that we really shake out, in the TRC when we do our construction drawings and those sorts of things. Not a big deal. We've done them before, and it makes a lot of sense. So really not an issue doing a pull-off rather than a back-out. As far as what we're doing with things, there is currently a NCDOT crossing in place. It is a legal numbered crossing. We have spoken with Geneseo as well as Norfolk. We have actually submitted the application. At TRC, we had previously had the communication started and those pieces that everything was in place. What we're actually doing, in effect, is we're downgrading the crossing from a technical perspective. Currently, it's set up as a commercial crossing, as it was with an auto auction, which had significant traffic at that point, and that's what's currently permitted with the railroad. We'd be reducing that to a residential crossing. In doing so, a lot of the things that you've stated as concerns are all things that we work out really between, I think Commissioner Payment said it, NCDOT, or maybe Commissioner Beaumont, one of the two over here. I was taking notes at the time. But basically, DOT as well as the railroad, they have all the standards. They have the traffic engineers. They have those pieces. And through the submittal of the design that we've already submitted to them, they'll give us feedback and say, based on this and what you're doing and your crossings and everything from, I think it's volume 10 of the traffic manual, they'll say, here's what you need to do. So we'll get all that from those people. It's not really a decision that Bissell Engineering or planning or myself get to decide. We're playing in their sandbox, and we got to play by their rules. And they do that because they're much better at it than we ever are or ever will be from their experience levels. So we'll definitely do whatever's needed with those pieces. In that will also come the discussions about a decel lane and stacking or those types of things if necessary as well. And they look at what the rail frequency is, how many cars we have, how long it is, how often, those sorts of things too. But yeah, all definite things that will get worked out throughout the construction plan piece. That's where all those other technical things occur. And we're definitely aware of that and have similar concerns with that piece. As far as the septics go being unsuitable, it's a technical term that Albemarle Regional Health uses. Every septic system, every permit that you get will say unsuitable. And then if you read further, it goes on to say provisionally suitable if the following is completed. And we've talked with them about the language of it because nobody likes the language, but they like the language and they write the permit. So it's kind of another one where, you're asking for their permission. And the short of it is we've hired the soil scientists, we've done the work, we've had 3-4 weeks of meetings with Albemarle Regional Health to discuss it, to make sure we, are putting a system in that's adequate, and we've done those pieces as well. And we even clarified with Mr. Carver as well, and he wrote back, Sam, and I quote, Sam, the proposed 31 lots will be considered provisionally suitable with the modifications listed in the site evaluations, along with a letter drafted from Dave Meyer, licensed soil scientist. Thank you, Kevin Carver, Environmental Health, Albemarle Regional Health Services. So we got that for clarification because there was a question about that at TRC of do these septics work, do they perk, do they, depending on what kind of language you want to use, and the short answer is yes.
So will you be doing the type of system that you have submitted in your packet here to be just enlighten us a little bit on it? Then I had an alternative or engineered system at my home in Richmond, and it was a typical tank, a fluid tank, and then it went into a peat moss gravel scenario, and then had a lift station from there out to the drain field.
I'm familiar exactly with what you're talking about. We do a lot of that stuff at the beach a lot of times,
Yeah.
or LPPs or other things like that. Mark and I are both very versed in septic systems. This is nothing like that. The short of it is, engineered again comes with a definition. And as soon as you install something other than a gravity device, your system is engineered. So we have a pump in it. So now that system is what's called an engineered system. It's still designed, it's still licensed for, still permitted by Albemarle Regional Health. What it does come with, though, is it comes with a review fee that you have to have annually to make sure that your pumps operate. Just because the general populace does not have an awareness about pumps or other things like that. Most people really don't know where it goes once they put it in a toilet. To be blunt, I mean, it's just they want to make sure things work, so they do require an ongoing permit to make sure it goes. Myself being a mechanical engineer as well, from a technical standpoint, I like it, and I also like it from a builder or developer standpoint, because I know that the pump, as long as the pump operates, the system's going to operate, and it's going to push the affluent or the liquid. So if you do have days of heavy rainfall where you ever have a condition, not that we ever have that kind of weather around here, but if you ever did have something like that, it's still going to pump to the drain field. It's not going to gurgle your toilets. It's not going to cause the problems and things like that. So from a technical standpoint, it's really a superior system. Even in the event you have a power failure, you have two tanks. You have a septic tank, which is a minimum of 1,000 gallons for a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom, or it's a 1,250 if you have a 5-bedroom. Long story short, you have the capacity of that tank, plus you have the capacity of a pump tank, even if the power went out. So you're really in a good situation. It's if it were my house, putting a pump in if you didn't have a gravity system that worked well, it's really not a bad idea. It's really a positive idea, and we do it thousands and thousands of times every day on the beach. You go to a lot of the houses down there, almost every one of I'd say over half of those are probably engineered systems because they have a pump.
Just one question, I guess, on this system. Once it's installed, I'm sure that there's going to be a fee associated with the homeowners to take care of this.
Yeah.
Engineered, and then because once you're gone and done and it's developed and it's out of there,
oh, yes,
it's going to be on their hands to
they
take
sign
care
a contract, and that contract's transferable with the deed, and it transfers to the property.
They're going to have to make sure all the time. Okay.
Yep.
But that responsibility lies with Albemarle Regional Health Systems, right?
They oversee everything, yes, sir.
Not the county.
Right. So, I mean, in short, all the things that Ms. LaCicero talked about, we're all pretty much in agreement and stacking hands on it. We did call a voluntary meeting with the residents of Ranchland that border the property, because we could put them in a bad situation, and we're really trying not to do it. So we tried to explain to them some of the situational awareness of where they're at. Years ago, I mean, it just comes down to, we just didn't see far enough in the future years ago. And when Ranchland was developed, we didn't have the easements in place. We didn't have the homeowners association in place. We didn't have the process and the methods to do it. We were just, not as mature as we are today. And, ignorance is bliss, but when you look back at things, you understand what you can do better. So one of the things we can do better to actually help those folks, now it's not going to, as we discussed with them Friday night up at the church in Ranchland, it's not a silver bullet. It's not like, hey, we do this and everything's great, everybody's going to be happy. It's, if we don't do this, it won't ever get any better. And two, if we do this, the people who are directly near this ditch could be affected very positively. Now, it's really difficult to quantify that because there's other things that affect into that. They have their in-feed ditches if they don't maintain and clean those that feed into the ditch. And what I'm talking about, if you look on this slide here, to the southern end of the page, you'll see a very solid blue line that runs across the lots, and then it progresses northward, and then it progresses to the right, and then diagonally comes up, and then diagonally to the left, back to the railroad tracks. That ditch currently, as you all know, I'm sure, water runs downhill. It doesn't do uphill real well. Well, that ditch goes a lot like this, and it just isn't going to flow. There's also some large growth and some large trees on the ranch land side, which is the non-colored side of this slide. And what we had proposed to residents, we can come in and we can very easily offset that ditch, and we could, offset it 40, 50 feet, dig a new ditch, and go on our way. If they want to work with us, and if they all will sign the proper paperwork, and Mark could tell you, and Mike, I'm sure, could tell you what the legal paperwork is, but the short of it is that allows us to do some modification to their side of that bank. we can lay that, on a proper swale like a 3-1 where it can actually vegetate. It could be walkable and mowed. Right now, on the farm side, it's pretty much straight down like you just cut it with a track hoe, and it's up and down a lot. Some areas are washed in. Some areas you can walk across. Some areas, you could bury a small car. It's just not maintained and it's not put in place. So what we proposed to do was, if you all would allow us to come do that, and we're not going to change the top of your bank anywhere, what I talked about was, imagine this is the top of your bank, and today it kind of goes down like this. We're going to take the top of your bank at the same point, and we're going to lay material in and build it out such that it comes into our property, and we'll cut a new swale. That way we don't disturb people's trees or other property and things like that. And if there's places that we can reach and clean, within reason, we'll do that as we go through there, but there may be a problem over here that I just can't get to because it's significantly onto their property. But if we do that, that would allow the affluent flow. That ditch actually is bidirectional. It has a high point where it flows one direction one way and then flows towards the Foss property, which we've already struck an agreement with that developer and allowed them to make improvements onto this property. We've already put that documentation in place when they develop Foss, so that, if you will, the left side of the page, the other light blue portion, can be maintained and done properly when they do that property. But the dark blue, if they allow us to do this, we can make this where this affluent can flow both directions properly from the high point, so that it can reach out to the culverts at 168 and clear the property, or at least have a chance of clearing the property. Right now, it just doesn't. If we don't do that, there's no easement in place on the ranch land side. So the only way they can do it is literally drive through their yard with an excavator and try to clean it out around some very mature trees, and probably risk damaging a lot of things: septic systems, homes, wells, maybe even people. This way, we have it set up. We'll have a clear easement across the back of Moyock Farms where this can be cleaned and maintained. We'll also have an association in place that is going to put the money in place, because as we do that, as you know, through the reserve funds that we put together with subdivisions, that would be put in place. Dues would be collected. Monies would be available, and there'd be somebody other than the county to come in and try to save the day. This is where they can save themselves and maintain it and properly manage the property they have, and also resolve a problem that we had years ago that we just never really thought about. So if we don't do this, and those residents don't agree to do it, and by the way, everybody there that night, once they understood it, and we got down to some pretty just simple terms and said, the short of it is, if we do this, you got a chance. If we don't, I don't know how you're ever going to clean this, because you can't come from this side. Now you got to do it from that side. So they said, yeah, that makes total sense. And actually, two people, Ms. Gilbert and the other young lady who was sitting here in the pink shirt, she had to take off. She had some other engagements, but she came tonight to speak positively about it as well, and that was something she had asked me to mention to you. So we're trying to be a good neighbor and do the right thing so that we don't landlock somebody. But it's really the only way to start making some inroads and helping some of the flooding situation that they have in that community.
Did you say you had you were going to be putting an HOA in place or something similar to that?
Yeah, we would be. You're required in the subdivisions to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay, and so within that, I'm assuming you're going to have language to make sure that these are maintained, so we don't have those problems that we have now with growth occurring on at least your side of the property.
Well, actually, it would take care of that. It would take care of the maintenance of that property. The paperwork we'd be putting together would be maintaining that. The thing we did express to residents is that you will need to maybe mow your bank once in a while. That'd probably be about as far as what they would need to do, because they don't have an association that covers that side of the property. And our property, we can only govern in a homeowner association what we have. But basically, from the invert on one side, without a doubt, and the other side, really all they'd have to do is mow, because it would be properly graded, stabilized, and vegetated. And once it's at that state, that's really where it needs to be to make something happen in that.
Well, and then following that, will the lots that touch this ditch, will you be putting any kind of easement in there, granted access for future use?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And it'll all be part of our North Carolina State Stormwater Permit. And each one of these lots, and every member in the community, when they buy a lot, they sign into that stormwater permit and take on that responsibility of that legally and that financial obligation. And that's what the dues as well as the fees that we put in place are meant to cover.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me add one thing about that. We're also going to be putting in a permanent easement along this side of the Rolling Creek ditch, so there'll be permanent ongoing maintenance of that as well, along with the common ditch there that you see on the left side of the page that is between this property and the Foss property, or between Ranchland and the Foss property. So the ranchland, or the Rolling Creek ditch and the common ditch between Ranchland and Foss will be cleaned out under another agreement. Now with this agreement that we're working on, these ditches will drain properly to that ditch as well as to the one that goes out the other way at the south end of the tract under 168. And the people who were at the meet, there were about 12 of the 18 property owners, I would guess, that were at the meeting Friday night. They were all in agreement, and they're going to go talk to the others and try to get agreements from them as well.
Well, what would happen if they didn't all agree?
It wouldn't be a good situation for them, and we'd probably end up calling y'all and asking you to maybe see if you can intercede for us, because I don't know how else to express to them that how important this is. And we spent 2 hours there Friday night, talking with anybody as long as we needed to and otherwise. But if we don't have them all, we can't kind of make it work. We kind of have to do it all or do none of it. It's just a.
I believe you said in your packet that if you didn't get, you would just build a parallel ditch.
That's
adjacent
really
to
the
this.
only alternative we have.
Yeah, right.
Because we can't go onto their property and disturb their property. Even though we're not taking anything from it, it'd be an additive process. It's called dumping. We're not allowed to do it. We really do, from trying to focus on some of the things even, Larry and others and Ms. Jarvis spoke about, as well as Ms. Etheridge, the trying to do for the better good. It really is for the better good to put this ditch in. We got to get everybody aligned on it. And I think we will. It just, we're only talking from Friday, so it's been 3 or 4 days.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
When you were talking about the railroad crossing, you want to change it from commercial to residential, so therefore you would not want to put a signal there. Is that correct?
No, what I'm saying with that is it's actually downgraded, and that's what the review piece is. As is, they've rated as commercial. Things change, standards as well as volume of traffic on 168 and otherwise, and that's what the railroad will re-review. And their recommendation, as long as DOT as well, I don't know what that is. I'm not a traffic engineer. But whatever their recommendation is and whatever their guidance is, that's what we'd be doing. It's kind of like a traffic light with crossings and signalization. We don't really get to decide what goes up there. They get to decide. So we're asking them for the crossing. They've agreed to downgrade it, but whatever they tell us we need to do is what we have to do. It's not a choice for us.
But y'all would maintain it until the Property Owners Association takes it over?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The roads as well as the crossing will be constructed to NCDOT standards. So that the short piece of it is that DOT agrees to take care of the road and the railroad agrees to take care of the crossing in the event of the day when we turn the roads over, which is the ultimate completion, of that roadway.
Well, what would happen if the railroad says, hey, I'm not taking it over?
Well, in allowing the first permit of it and permitting the crossing, as well as agreeing to downgrade it to a residential from a commercial, they're already agreeing to that in that process.
That they'll take it over?
Yes, as long as we do what they tell us to do, yes. There are certain things you have to do. You have to make sure, that you install it to their standards. It has to be maintained that way. You have to have a certain number of homes or residences built in that community. And when you meet those standards, then you can apply just like you do for roads. You can petition the roads as well as the crossing to the railroad.
Have there not been incidents where the railroad would not take it over? Attorney?
In this county, I don't know about, I do know there's the ongoing issue with the Shingle Landing railroad crossing that took some time to finally, I think, have the railroad and DOT come to some arrangement whereby DOT finally, I believe, took over the railroad crossing there.
Mr. McCree, that crossing, when we did a previous project in Shingle Landing on Moyock Landing Drive, often confused with Shingle Landing Drive,
I meant
was,
yeah,
was,
right.
was some of the concern and the issue. And in doing so, we have, with what we do, we have some relationships with some of the persons in the railroads. And we had discussed with them about the apartment project we have up there that we're waiting to get started on in Shingle Landing subdivision. And in doing so, some of the delay in that project we were helped to alleviate through that project, because as we had our community meeting, the residents of Shingle Landing asked us, well, what about the railroad? What are you going to do about that? And I said, well, I happen to know some people. I'll be glad to call them. And when we called them, there was an issue somewhat with the application relative to the name. And they were looking for the railroad crossing on Shingle Landing Drive, not on Moyock Landing Drive. And once they understood the right street, they were able to get some things processed and move forward. And that was some of the delay of why that took years, to be honest with you.
I also think when that first came forward, that whole development, that was a private or farm path crossing across that railroad track. And I think that created some issues also, because they used that before they ever went to the railroad.
And it's significant. This is an actual licensed crossing. You can tell that indicative by the blue placard in white lettering that it'll actually have a number for the railroad. And if you have that, you have a legitimate licensed DOT crossing, not just a farm crossing. You're absolutely right.
I just wanted to go back and make a comment to the public out there regarding, we talk about stormwater a lot, and we talk about drainage, and we get developers coming up here, and they're going to clean and improve ditches, when that's great and it's fantastic. But what a lot of people don't understand is the drainage. I don't care what you do to the ditches, it's all dependent on the sound level. If we hit a strong noise and that sound is driven high, I don't care what you do to the ditches, they're not going to drain. So people got to understand that. Just because we're saying we're going to improve ditches doesn't necessarily mean we get a hurricane or something through there, that water's going to flow out. If that sound level's high, our drainage is going to cease until that sound drops, and then the drainage will pick up to normal. So, I don't want people's expectations to get high when we developers and people come here and say we're going to improve ditches and all that. It's great that we're cleaning them and taking care of them, but the drainage in this county is indicative to what the level of that sound is.
We had that question on Friday night as well from a gentleman in the back. I can see him sitting there. And he asked the question, he said, the ditch behind my house, for every year I've lived here for, I don't know how many, 20-some years, he had said, has always had water in it. But this year it doesn't have water in it. Can you tell me why? And,
No rain.
I kind of went on to elaborate with him, and I said, well, it's really not a simple answer, but what it comes down to is the tides that we have. It comes down to how much water was discharged by the Corps of Engineers out of the Great Dismal Swamp that hit Guinea Mill Canal, which also hit lateral A or B and C. It also has to do with the rainfall we had. It depends on which way the wind blew. It also depends on maybe that culvert that your neighbor cleaned out next to you, and and then how much it rained or didn't rain. So I mean, the short answer is it's a whole lot more complicated than Mark or myself or anybody can really explain. And the tidal piece is huge. And we expressed to them many times that, look, this is not a silver bullet. This is not necessarily going to make it better, but I can guarantee you that it's not going to make it worse, because we're giving you more capacity. Instead of a ditch like this, now we're laying it back, we're giving more volume, we're making it actually flow and have a chance to flow out of there. Now, if you got tide pushing against it, obviously it can't flow uphill, to your point, but if you put the right tools in place, it has a chance of working. And that's really what we try to express to everybody. But if we don't, as it continues to silt in and continues to grow more growth that's larger and other problems, it's just going to exasperate an existing situation for sure. The other thing we also expressed to them too on stormwater, if I may as well, I'm sorry to cut you off, Commissioner White or Chairman White, but is when we build a subdivision, the runoff and the stormwater post-development is actually less than what it is farm field. And by design, we flow inward to the streets, we flow down those into the BMPs, and then we have holding capacity for a 6-inch rainfall. Currently, right now, as a farm field, we can basically cut the ditches however we need to, or whatever we need to do to make the crops grow, and we're not holding water. We're trying to get it off the property as quick as we can. So with a subdivision, we actually retain more water than what we do with a farm field.
Just one other comment. I think it kind of got glossed over, but one of the staff concerns was the amount of vegetation at the entry point. were you guys planning on taking out some of the trees in there and replanting at the entryway or something to increase visibility?
Again, that'd be directly a railroad decision on them of what we need to clear, because they own that. They own, was it 60 feet either side of the tracks, and that's their right-of-way. So they'll advise us as to what needs to be cleared and where. And typically the way that goes is they'll do some balanced approach, and they may say, well, we want to clear this much, and we want to use these type of signals and safety measures on the crossing. So there'll probably be a combination of clearing. There'll be some sort of signalization, whether it's bars, crossbucks, lights, I don't know, but that'll all come from the railroad and DOT.
So, well, I just want to make sure that, more so maybe that you petition them to allow you to do some cutback to increase that visibility. As you know, it's terrible coming out
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yeah, definitely. And we definitely will. Right now there's a space for about, when I measured it after the pictures of the vehicle as well, because we had those in the previous report, it's approximately 80 feet. I think it was 77 feet that I measured that we have from the right-of-way zone to the road for us. So we have some room for a few vehicles right now. The picture doesn't do it quite as much justice, but yeah. And as far as clearing, clearing is some of the cheapest safety measures you can have, because when you see a big train coming and you can see it for a good distance, it's a whole lot better than peeking out around behind a tree to see if something's going to hit you or not.
Okay, thank you.
If it comes back that they say you don't need a signalized crossing, would you consider maybe some type of warning system that when a train is coming, a flashing light in that queue lane would start to flash and say, approaching train?
I'd love to be able to tell you yes, but I really can't, because it's not a decision that I get to make. It's their decision. They own that 65 feet, and they tell us exactly what goes there. We have to use their contractors. We have to do it to their specs. So it's a railroad piece. Additionally, there's also a second entrance as well from this community that would go through the Foss track too, that you'll see as well. So while that's not today or necessarily would be with this, that would be in place. If it was a decision I could make, that's one thing, but it's not. I don't get a seat at the table even to give a vote.
I know dealing with the railroad is tough. Been doing it all my life.
They own as high as you can see and as far as you can dig.
And do nothing to maintain it.
They got some great attorneys.
Those laws came into existence in 1890 or 1905.
Yeah,
or whatever.
and they've stood for so long. It's one of those things, but they don't want issues either. I mean, they really don't. They're not doing it to save money or otherwise, because at the end of the day, what they prescribe, if I want to cross the tracks, that's what I got to do. And they don't want to be in the paper hearing about a train derailment or an injury at a crossing either. But they're also trying to make a good decision. So it's a tough job they have, but they are much better at it than any of us are.
Okay, anything further for the applicant? Nothing? Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Did you need something, Mark?
Yeah, I would like to have a question for Ms. Licicero. There was, in the staff recommendations, there was one that I hadn't seen until tonight, which was the 6-to-1 slope on this ditch that we've been talking about. What we had actually represented to the community on Friday evening was that would be cut back at a 3-to-1 slope. And, sometimes we do 6-to-1 slopes on like a property line swale. But I think that we're going to go from about a 1-to-1 to a 3-to-1 is what we had represented.
Okay.
So we probably took that 6-to-1 from another project. Just ease of maintenance on a 6-to-1 slope is going to be easier than a 3-to-1 slope. So that's probably why we had made that recommendation.
So would you?
But I don't know that we have room for a 6-to-1 slope.
Well, so what would that look like width-wise, I guess, would be?
Well, if you have a 3-foot deep ditch, that would be 36 feet
Okay.
at the top.
Staff is recommending, what was the say again?
6-to-1.
6-to-1. And they were proposing a 3-to-1.
Which would be an 18-foot wide ditch.
Oh, man, that'd take a lot of good water.
Right. You can do some tubing on that ditch. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Biddle.
One other question, please.
Yes, sir.
Sam mentioned capacity. How big are your stormwater ponds?
They are roughly between 6 and 7 acres. The size won't be finalized until we finish the stormwater modeling. We'll be doing that an actual hydrogeologic model, a 10-year storm and the 100-year storm, and we'll be sizing it from that. The reason that we located them where we did was that you actually have two plus feet of fall from the backside to the railroad on this property. So even when they overflow, they're not going to impact the property right away.
If I understood you correctly, 6 inches of 6-inch rainfall capacity.
Right. Plus we're doing some berming around them that'll actually manage a bigger storm.
Wait a minute, you just told us they were going to overflow, Mark. That's not what you need to be telling
Yeah,
us.
that's what I picked up on.
When they overflow. That's not what you want to tell us.
12-inch rainfall, for example.
Right. Which we had last year.
I think what Mark was trying to say is that no matter what we do, we're not going to test the will of God.
Now, Commissioner Etheridge's question, I mean, you can look at the two ponds. I mean, one's a lot longer than one's wider. What's the total acreage between them? Is it 6 acres total?
I think it's between
Roughly.
between 6 and 7, and they're connected by a pipe, so they act as a unit.
They can balance.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Sorry, I'm just happen to be staring at it. BMP 1 is 4.59 acres, BMP 2 is 2.98. Ballpark.
Okay. All right, thank you, gentlemen. At this time, I'll open public comment on this agenda item, and I don't have anyone signed up. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this agenda item this evening? All right, seeing no one, I'll close that and ask if there's any discussion amongst the board, or open the floor for a motion.
Can we phase the development in
Yes.
because of the school capacities?
Say that what she wanted to know about
Phase it in.
phasing it in. It is,
You may make that a condition of the permit.
Is that something you're interested in asking the applicant if they'd like to, it's a conditional use?
Because of the school capacity, we might consider phasing it
My only thought, though, is it's only 31 lots, so this is not a great, I'm not sure there's a great candidate for phasing in.
It's 100.
I mean, if it was, no,
She's with Ms. LaCicero. You said 7.75 elementary.
No, I thought about that too, but then the lot size, you might have kind of weighing back and forth.
Can she give those numbers again? It was
It's
7.75.
7.75 for
Elementary,
elementary, 2.4, 2.5 for middle, and 4.3 for high school.
Yes.
So
15 kids.
15 kids.
So those numbers weren't enough to, I guess, trip the ticker on any of the capacity, which is why we actually put the number in there, because the numbers are only generating 15 kids, so not enough to impact the percentage of capacity.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion for approval. I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to touch on everything. I'm going to say under use permit review standards under section 1 that the bullet points be followed, all 3 of them, but it will be depending on railroad and NCDOT requirements. Under applicant findings, all 4 bullet points be listed, that are listed be part of the approval motion. Under item 2, under applicant findings, the one bullet point that is listed be included. Under 3, under applicant findings, that the 3 bullet points listed be included.
Mr. Etheridge, Commissioner Etheridge, I think you do have to say that the use will not injure the adjoining value under number 2.
Okay. Under applicant findings, number 2, the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it is located. In the applicant findings, the one bullet point listed be included. Number 3, the use will be in conformity with the land use plan and other officially adopted plans. Those 3 bullet points be included. And under number 4, the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. And the two bullet points listed be included in the approval.
Mr. County Attorney, does that suffice for your?
Those are your findings. Now, you want to make sure that you haven't made the findings place any conditions
I have one.
upon the development.
I have one question on the second page under number 4. Says the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. The next to last sentence, or the last sentence of the first bullet, it says development is limited to blank residential building permits per 12 months. Since it's a 31 lot subdivision, I would say not.
Strike that sentence.
Strike that sentence.
Strike that sentence.
Or it says the board may propose.
We're striking the last sentence.
The development is limited to, and then it says fill in the blank, residential building permits in per 12-month period.
So he can pull all 31 permits if he wanted to within a year.
Well, and that's where it says the board may, but we're not opposing anything, so that would avoid that anyways. But
Well, and that's so part of your motion, Mr. Etheridge, Commissioner Etheridge,
Yes.
would be to strike that.
I agree with the staff's recommended conditions under item 1.
Are we going to set any kind of condition? I know he said it was minor with the mailbox cluster. Is that something we're going to set to similar that he did in his other subdivision? I believe that's mentioned in here as well.
Well, I think that falls under bullet point number 2, under the use permit standards, that the NCDOT preferred design for access to the community mailbox area shall be used.
Ms. Cicero, do you know what that is? What the preferred design for a mailbox by DOT?
The pull-off and a pull-off. Cut out, and not where the residents will be
They can
backing out into
Pull in
the-
and pull out?
Yeah, pull
Right,
in
they
and
can
pull out.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Seems like we had to do we have to do any of the land use policies? Well, you said item 3.
I guess whether you want to consider, you heard a lot of representations made again about drainage ditches and improvements. I don't know if you've made any condition about that to require it to be done. So again, out of caution, you want to make sure that you place into your motion for this permit any stormwater drainage improvements or ditch systems that you expect to see in this project as represented to you during the testimony.
do we also want to change the 6-to-1 to 3-to-1? Do we need to make that change in there as well?
I think
Yeah,
so,
I think we need to make that change, because that was mentioned.
there's a lot of information in the material presented to you, but I don't know if we've been clear about a condition or conditions that the applicant must meet, particularly as it relates to
Well,
stormwater
and
drainage
Commissioner,
system
I think
improvement.
that change has to be made too, because we changed the ditch size as well.
So that would be under the applicant findings, the density, first bullet point, about the last two-thirds of it. Drainage improvements will be made that will benefit both the new subdivision and existing subdivision. At that point, would it be relevant for us to add 3-to-1 ditch, and that the aforementioned improvements will be made or shall be
I
made?
have up on the screen, I have the staff recommended conditions of approval. For the signalized railroad crossing, investigate the use of a deceleration southbound lane for queuing of a train, clear the line of sights for the train crossing, install perimeter ditches to serve both the new development and ranch land, deepen and lay back 6-to-1 slope, and you can change that to 3-to-1 and put existing ditches on proper grade where permission can be obtained from property owners, and install community mailboxes to NCDOT design standards.
Can we change the one where it says the deepen and layback 3-to-1 slope and put existing ditches on proper grade? Is that the property border and ranch land where if he didn't get full compliance of the 18, that he would do the parallel ditch? Is that in the staff's part?
Yes, if permission, in the staff report, it said if permission is not forthcoming, install parallel ditch as approved by stormwater staff.
I'm going to ask a question about that. Say he gets 15. Could he just move out on the 3 that he didn't get and parallel ditch that?
My phones would ring a lot more, but yeah.
If you could design that properly, I suppose he could, but I think ultimately that the design, the actual making it work that manner,
Probably
it
doesn't
would
make
be
a lot of sense.
problematic in
You're gonna-
my
You don't want
eyes.
more twists and turns in the ditch.
Well, then why can't we just say whichever way is,
Whichever way he can do it.
he can do it?
And that was what,
That was what was offered in the packet, was that they're willing to do either one. Either if they can get permission, they'll go 3-to-1
Okay.
on the existing ditch and fix that, and or put in a parallel ditch if they're not able to get permissions.
100% permission.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we put that in the motion. It's always a lot to it.
Yeah, I was just going by the sheet we were given for motion for approval.
So, and this staff recommendation, we don't know, it'll be some type of signalized railroad crossing. Are you inclined to adopt any of those things as well on this?
I
motion?
said, depending on DOT and railroad recommendations
Whatever
and
their recommendations are.
requirements.
Okay.
And that would be also with the deceleration lane as well as the clear
Correct.
line of sights.
All right, so we need to probably go through this motion again, just to make sure the staff is clear on, and the wording and the verbiage on this.
Maybe we should read the whole thing too. I know it will take time, but for clarification,
Because we're going to have to change
I think.
some of the.
Want me to do it?
Well, yeah, would it be more appropriate for him to withdraw his original motion and put forth a new motion, I believe, just to clarify, since it was kind of garbled up?
Well, I think that probably would make sense at this point, just to have a clean slate.
Right.
Oh, I'll withdraw it and go again. I'd like to move to approve PB 19-14 Mayock Farms preliminary plat use permit with staff recommendations because the applicant has demonstrated the proposed use will meet the use permit standards of the UDO. Use permit review standard worksheet will go number 1. The use will not endanger the public health or safety. Staff recommended conditions: a signalized railroad crossing with adequate spacing for stacking of vehicles shall be installed. NCDOT preferred design for access of the community mailbox area shall be used. All requirements from the Albemarle Regional Health Services shall be met for all septic systems. Albemarle Regional Health Services has classified all 31 lots as unsuitable for a conventional septic system due to the poor soils and high groundwater. They did comment appears on-site septic systems have the potential to perform poorly. A North Carolina professional engineer must provide a plan showing septic area, original grade, and proposed finished elevations, ditching levels to be excavated to, and outlet elevations. Albemarle Regional Health Services suggests the following improvements may allow the property to be reclassified as provisionally suitable. Fill area of 120 feet by 86 feet with 24 inches of sand, groundwater lowering device, sand backfill trenches to a depth of 4.5 feet. Under applicant findings, stormwater management will be provided in accordance with the current Currituck County Stormwater Manual and the UDO. 2 large stormwater retention ponds will be constructed to manage and retain stormwater in excess of the referenced requirements. Surrounding drainage ditches will be improved and/or new ditches constructed in parallel to improve existing drainage conditions. Albemarle Regional Health Services has evaluated each of the 31 lots for suitability for wastewater disposal and has established criteria for the approval of wastewater disposal system for each lot. Number 3, the project is being designed in accordance with the North Carolina Department of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources sedimentation and erosion control standards and will therefore minimize erosion and and contain siltation on site. The subdivision entrance will involve improving an existing railroad crossing in accordance with NCDOT and Genovese and Wyoming standards. Roadway connectivity is also being provided to the adjacent falls property. Number 2, the use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the area in which it is located. Under applicant findings, the density is similar to that of ranchland subdivision, and the proposed residential subdivision will be surrounded by residential uses. So it will be in harmony with the land to the west and south has been developed into single-family homes. The land to the north has been approved for planned development. Land to the east across Currituck Highway is farmland and single-family lots. This tract will be developed into lots that are larger than the adjacent ranchland subdivision. In addition, over 30% of the land will be preserved as open space. Drainage improvements will be made that will benefit both the new subdivision and existing subdivision. The use will not injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will be in harmony with the surrounding area, and it is believed will be a benefit to the value of the adjacent community. 3, the use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plans. The Mayock Small Area Plan classifies this area as limited service. The proposed development density of 0.31 units per acre is well below the 1 to 1.5 units per acre envisioned in the Mayock Small Area Plan. The land use plan classifies this area as full service. The proposed density is only 0.31 units per acre, well below the 2 to 4 units per acre envisioned in the land use plan. Some of the relevant policies include MSAP policies, TR2, IS4, FLU1, CC1, and LUP policies, ES1, HN1, TR4, TR8, and PP. The use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. Elementary schools that serve this region are currently at 92% actual capacity, and that is for the 2021 committee capacity, the Mayock in the elementary and high school groups. The Board of Commissioners may propose additional conditions of approval such as timing limits on residential lots or units available for occupancy to ensure adequate public facilities remain sufficient to serve this development. And next point under that, other public facilities are sufficient to serve the development. And I'd like to include the staff recommendations that are on the screen. Signalize railroad crossing, investigate the use of southbound deceleration lane for queuing for a train, and that will be dependent on NCDOT and the railroad's recommendations and requirements. Clear the line of sights for rail crossing will also fall under DOT and the railroad. Install perimeter ditches to serve both new development and ranch land. Deepen and lay back to a 3-to-1 slope and put existing ditches on proper grade where permission can be attained from property owners. Install community mailboxes to the NCDOT design standards. That's my motion.
All right. Who've got that?
He got it.
Yeah. That's all. Okay. All right. Any other catches by the board that we need to address? No? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Do we need a recess? 1:05? Okay, we'll take a brief 5-minute recess and finish up the meeting after that. Thank you. All right, everybody, thank you. I'll call the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing consideration of authorization of an economic development incentive for Buffalo City Distillery, LLC. And with that, Mr. Larry's coming up for that one. The call, Larry.
Thank you, Commissioner White. My recommendation, and it's in front of you, about this incentive for Buffalo City Distillery, and we have the owner, Mr. Buddy Byram, sitting here with his wife Sharon, and they're going to be making a sizable investment down at the lower part of the county. Where the site is by Pan Ridge Road, just south of where the Dollar General, the new Dollar General. We talk about, things like hotel, quality life, jobs, and so forth. Having another demand generator in the county, and this will be the first in the county to have a craft distillery, is very important. And the number of jobs that we're talking here are projected over 5 years are 7 positions full-time. Average salaries are higher than what the wages are here in Currituck County. Even if you broke it down by a weekly wage, it's still higher. So Buddy's very committed to doing this. It'll be something good for the county. Just in my presentation, just talking about those things. It's going to bring visitors, if you're aware of just craft breweries in the past and the crowds that they have that follow. So in the distillery business, craft businesses, same kind of thing. People line up. Talk about bringing visitors. People line up nights before, ready to be the first ones to get in to a distillery. And then, of course, with the recent change in the General Assembly, allowing this industry to grow, it's going to be a good thing for us here in the county. So if you have any questions about it, and like I said, in terms of dollars, he's making millions of dollars. In terms of investment, he actually has some equipment, 5 container full of equipment that's being shipped over from Europe that he'll need to find a place in. I'm working with him on that until his building's built. But he's ready to go. So if there's any questions that you have for Mr. Byram, he's more than happy to get up. But my recommendation, this is really a small token for an economic development incentive compared to what he's going to be investing here in the county.
Just can't wait to see the doors open up.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
And just for the board's information, the request before you tonight is for an economic development incentive in the amount of $14,305, specifically to offset the extra cost for a larger water tap as opposed to a standard 3/4 inch.
As I said before, Mr. Byram you'd already planned on a certain amount of money for this. This is an additional cost because of the change in our cost structures, and just so the general public out there understands that, that he is still paying in. We're just helping him out a little bit with the increased costs that were not factored in the startup cost of his business. Is it
That's
pretty much sum it
correct.
up in a nutshell?
Yes, everything has been approved, that was, last year, and then, of course, these changes came in April, and just for different reasons, he hasn't started yet, and that came into effect, and that wasn't anticipated.
And this is
So, yes.
because of change in state law, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
A lot of counties doing it, state.
No, exactly, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Would
Thank
you like
you.
to come up and speak for a moment, or if you're not, that's fine as well. Maybe introduce
Don't
yourself.
put a microphone in front of me. I did not come with something prepared.
Okay.
But I did want to say that just to help you understand how a distillery operates, we had originally planned on a very large water line into the facility. Not in our case, it was not because of the total amount of water we were going to consume. It was because of the instantaneous flow rate that we wanted to have, because when I need to fill a tank in the process, how quickly I can fill it is an efficiency issue. Most distilleries operate with a very high water use, and the most typical or the highest use consumption of water is condensing cooling water. The process generates heat, and you have to vaporize alcohol, and then you have to condense it back to a liquid, and that's a constant flow of cold water that then is heated in that process. Most of the distilleries simply waste dump all of that hot water. They just bring in the regular cold water tap, run it through, and then if they have sewer system, it goes into the sewer. If they have a septic, typically it's more than you can dump, so then they end up putting it into the stormwater system, and you can get a permit for cooling water to do that. What we chose to do was to put in chillers and tanks, and we're going to recycle the cooling water in the process. And so, we basically have cut our water draw rate something in the neighborhood of about 75%. I'd given Larry some numbers. Over 5 years, that'll amount to over 2.5 million gallons of water that I won't be pulling from the water system. So that was one of the issues. The other was the way the new development fee was established. It was based on water meter size, which is a proxy for how much water are you going to pull out of the system. And in our case, we'd originally planned on a 3-inch line. We went back and redesigned after we found out about the development fees to a 1.5-inch line, because the fees would have been over $65,000 under 3-inch line. We pulled it down. 1.5 is the minimum I could go to, and then this incentive basically bridges the difference between what that fee is and what it was when we went into planning and site approval. So that's, if you have any questions.
Do not. Any questions?
No,
Thank
great.
you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, this time I'll open public comment for this agenda item, and I don't have anyone signed up for this one as well. Anybody out there want to talk distilleries this evening? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close public comment and open the floor for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Oh,
No,
go ahead.
no.
Ms. Jarvis?
Your area, go for it.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries unanimously. Thank you all. Next agenda item, C, public hearing and possible adoption of a resolution authorizing approval of a financing agreement for design and construction of a public safety facility. Is that one you, Mr. Steichleiter?
Yeah, I'll take it from here. The what you have before you is accepting a bid to secure debt on our public safety facility. This would allow us to secure debt up to $25 million through BB&T. We went out for bid for the debt. They were the low bidder. We don't anticipate having to borrow that much money, but that gives us the wiggle room in case something unexpected was to happen. We will be going to the Local Government Commission, or LGC, in September. They have to actually approve us going forward with the debt. But this is for the public safety building, which is going to exist in our in Maple Park, over beside the aviation building. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Seem to be any questions? Mr. Etheridge?
Currently, how much debt does the county carry?
On the general fund side, I believe that we are getting ready to roll off, and I'm going to look to Sandra in the back. I think we're getting ready to roll off our aviation debt. We did in June. So I believe at that point, general fund side, I believe we're debt-free.
Debt-free.
Yes, sir.
Now you want to put us back in debt?
Yes, sir. And just for information purposes, the debt that we're looking to secure would be a 10-year loan, trying to keep the term short so that we can get back to debt-free very quickly. But by the time 10 years comes around,
We'll be through schools.
There will be another need.
I remember that at one time, we were the lowest per capita indebted county in the state.
I don't know if we're there, but even with this, we're still probably very close. We do carry some debt on our utility sides, but those are enterprise funds, and so they aren't part of the general fund. But
user pay systems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing further for Mr. Ben, I'll open public comment on this agenda item. And again, it seems to be a theme tonight. No one has signed up. Is there anyone who would like to come up and speak to this? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment and open the floor for a motion from the board.
Move for approval of the resolution.
We have a second. Do we have any more comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, carries unanimously. Next agenda item is new business. A, consideration and action for the purchase of fire apparatus for Crawford Township.
We left off the no wake.
Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. Thank you. Public hearing and consideration of a resolution for establishing of a no-wake zone in Corova Beach Canal System. Is that one coming to you as well?
yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution on a public hearing to establish a no-wake zone in the Corova Canal systems. This came about because of some concerns from the board and from citizens. You have to actually formally request North Carolina Wildlife to look into it. They've done their study. They said that they were very grateful, actually, to the county for requesting the study, that it was definitely needed for no-wake zones in that area for various reasons. There's 90-degree turns, and some of the waterways are pretty tight and shallow. So this would, the public hearings for folks to voice any concerns they may have or any support, and then the resolution would actually put the no-wake zones into effect. And then I believe that NC Wildlife would come out and post the no-wake zones.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? All right, this time I'll open the public comment on this agenda item, and we don't have anyone signed up for that. Is there anyone that would like to speak out there on the no-wake zone? Anyone's jumping up? Did you say have something? No, thank you. So I will close the public comment on that agenda item. And
So can I ask one quick question to the county manager? And I asked this earlier. The mouth of the opening when it comes into that's where the signs will be placed by the wildlife. So when they come in, if they're coming in from Knott's Island, the mouth of how it will hit right there.
Correct. That's my understanding from the map that was provided by NC Wildlife.
And they selected the site, correct, where it started?
They did the study, and they delineate where it would begin and end.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you. All right, well, since it's in my district, I will move for approval on that agenda item.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the board? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries unanimously. Now we're on to new business. Thank you for correcting me there. Consideration and action for the purchase of fire apparatus for Crawford Township Volunteer Fire Department. Who's getting that one? You again.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I believe we do have some representatives from Crawford Fire Department in the audience with us tonight. This is a request for the general fund to enter into a grant agreement with the Crawford Fire Department so that they can purchase a 2010 piece of fire apparatus. The total cost for that is $265,000. They are offering to reduce their operating budget, specifically vehicle maintenance, by $26,500 a year over a 10-year period in order to pay the grant back. This would allow them to go ahead and purchase the apparatus without having to wait for the fund to build up for the replacement apparatus tax that we have. The one thing to note is they feel like the savings is going to come from vehicle maintenance because they're going to get rid of some older equipment, 2 pieces of equipment that are quite a bit older, and it'll let them shift some things around and how they roll out for calls.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
I do not have any. Anyone else have any?
And the new apparatus is a rescue pumper, is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you gentlemen have anything this evening, or are you just here wait to see what we do?
Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. Well, it doesn't appear to be any, so thank you. And I'll open the floor for a motion on this agenda item.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we approve the, sorry. Mr. Beaumont, go for it. I know you were waiting for that one. Yes, sir.
Chairman, I move for approval for the county's actions to permit the purchase of the fire apparatus by Crawford Township Volunteer Fire Department.
Second.
Oh.
Look at that. There's three of us that live in that district. We were all fighting for that.
Because I apologize.
All right.
Didn't
Any
realize
further
it.
discussion from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it carries unanimously. Item B, consideration and action for the purchase of fire apparatus for Moyock Volunteer Fire Department. Mr. Steichleiter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is for the purchase of a replacement apparatus. Moyock Fire Department had an accident with one of their engines. This is to replace that engine. They're currently using a apparatus that they got from Crawford Fire Department. They would be surplusing that piece of apparatus. The request is for the amount of $361,250. That added to the insurance funds that came in of $116,000 takes it to a base price of $477,250. It will meet all required NFPA and ISO requirements. This is a budget amendment, and we do have the funds for this saved up in the fire apparatus fund balance.
Questions for?
And the one where we had discussed before, because that was the one that was wrecked, there was some reserve money, which they do have that to go towards that dollar amount?
$116,000, yes, sir. So that's the insurance money that they got for the wrecked piece of apparatus. They are planning on spending money that they get from surplusing the engine that they had gotten from Crawford to outfit the new piece of apparatus.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And this did receive a favorable recommendation from the Fire EMS Advisory Board.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion from the board? Mr. Beaumont, you look like you were chomping at the bit on this one. Oh.
I make a motion that we approve this request from Moyock Volunteer Fire Department.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. Resolution authorizing sole source purchase of camstrup meters and related hardware and software for Mainland Water. Oh, Mr. Ike.
Mr. Chairman, this is a resolution to authorize, as an exemption to the bid laws, the sole source acquisition or purchase of water meters from Fortiline Incorporated. The company has provided previously the county's water system with the camstrup meter. It is the only licensed dealer in North Carolina to provide those meters. The Water Department presents that it is essential to the ongoing operation of the system and to assure compatibility that these same meters be purchased at this time for placement within the water system. The proposal has been properly advertised as required by law, and you would be authorizing, again, the sole source acquisition of these water meters in the amount of $323,358.56.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? All right. Open the floor for a motion.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next item is consideration for the approval of travel to attend the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Annual Conference in Guilford County. Commissioners Owen Etheridge, Mary Etheridge, and Selena Jarvis would like to go do that. And we are supposed to hear why you guys are going to that before we approve it. So you seem to be the ringleader on these things.
Well, it is a wonderful opportunity to network with fellow commissioners throughout the state. A lot of times you hear issues that affect us, and sometimes people can give you solutions that you never thought of. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think our county manager is going to attend also. So we're real pleased to have our county manager go along, if we're approved to go.
Tell us Ben was going. That's going to be fun.
I'd like to make the motion to approve their travel.
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Last item is the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
Ms. Kitty. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And at this time, I'll recess the regular meeting and open the special meeting for the Tourism Development Authority to discuss TDA budget amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have two budget amendments before you. The first one is a carry forward. So what that means is they had money left over in last year's budget. They want to basically roll that money forward so that they could use it this year, as well as any funds appropriated in those line items. The budget amendment is in the amount of $133,833.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments, concerns from the group? I will make a motion to approve that amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And
we have one other budget amendment for the TDA. This one is actually to appropriate fund balance in order to spend it on capital outlay. The cattle grate, as you head into the four-wheel drive area, has become it's rusted through in some places, so we're going to spend $10,951 in order to get a new one fabricated and replace the old one. We are going to keep the old one for emergency purposes. It is still usable if it's ever needed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I'll move for approval on that as well.
Second.
Mr. Eschers, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now that we're done with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting of the Tourism Development Authority.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, I'll reconvene the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners and move into closed session pursuant to GS 143-318.11, A5, to establish or instruct county staff concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the county in negotiating the material terms of a contract for the acquisition of real property purchased or exchanged owned by Panther Landing, LLC, and located at 101 Panther Landing Road at the western corner of Tulls Creek Road and Panther Landing Road, to be used for any other public purpose and pursuant to GS 143-318.11A3 to consult with the county attorney in order to preserve attorney-client privilege. And since everyone's cleared out of here, I guess we can stay in here this evening with